Hello and welcome to the Genius Move Audio Academy podcast. My name is Paul Brewer. Today I speak with Micheal Barkley, who manufactures the Barkley Mic brand of ribbon microphones. His website is barkleymic.com. For our chat, Micheal brought two newly manufactured mics to record the podcast with. We set the mics up at either end of the console here at Genius Move, with the capsules pointing down the room, essentially pointing at the sides of our mouths. Then the figure of 8 null point was pointing at each other, helping isolate each microphone recording. Ribbon microphones, by design, aren't particularly bright, but have the reputation of taking EQ well. I high-passed the low end and brightened the top end a little for our recording. I began by asking Micheal, why build a ribbon mic?
It's because I'm a brass player. Basically, recorded my own trumpet playing for quite a lot of time using it. I mean, obviously I started recording when I was quite young, maybe 14, 15, 16. So cheap condensers and cheap dynamics, and never happy with the tone. So the condenser, especially the cheap ones, have a lot of nasty high frequencies, and I have a lot of nasty high frequency in my sound on the trumpet. So I want to take that edge off. So I bought a ribbon and didn't know how to use it because it was so dark. The first one I tried, and that's going back 20 years. And that, I guess, was sort of always in my mind. I've always had a curiosity about recording from being real young, with making binaural heads and stuff with my dad.
Right. So your dad was an influence then?
Very much so, yeah. He's an electronic engineer. And
right.
So everything I know is direct responsive. Yeah, so the ribbon was just, when I heard how it sweetened the tone, I kind of realized that it's a nice match. And then you fast forward a bit, and ribbons got pretty popular again over the last 20 years or so.
That's true.
Certainly from when David Royer started bringing his stuff out was probably the inception of that being used on horns quite a lot. People like Jerry Hay, who's an amazing arranger and trumpet player who did all the Michael Jackson stuff and so on.
All right.
Going back to that era, and Seawind horns before that. He was recording, and I think started using the 121. His normal's a 54, a KM54 Neumann, small capsule tube condenser, but quite a nice microphone on brass for that punchy thing. But definitely the 121 started to appear in the pop circuit. It just works great on horns. Ribbons just tend to really complement the frequencies. So I didn't know any of that when I started building these, though. It was
all right.
Not these. Sorry, when I started getting into the ribbon side of things. I just know, when I played into it, it actually sounded like my instrument again, and took off all the edge, and in a good way. So.
And EQ can't do that.
Well, you can, but I don't know. I've never been happier than when I've got something going in straight right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's been my thing, and also skill level of using EQ and how good is your monitoring.
Right.
So you can do a lot. Absolutely, but it's the aesthetic going in or the tonality going in is everything. But that's kind of where it spawned, and I couldn't afford better mics, so I actually built a few tube condensers before building ribbons, and I really liked them. And then that little memory of my youth came back, where I loved recording on a ribbon, so I decided to start taking them apart and building them.
And did you base these on anything in particular? Oh, we should mention as well that we're actually using a pair
right enough.
A fresh one, only made yesterday.
For the show.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Not specifically. I've had a tonal concept in mind that I wanted.
All right, okay.
So I kind of iterated them. I went back and forth on design stuff and transformers and tuning, ribbon thickness, corrugation, magnets, motor, all that kind of stuff, until it was sitting right. And there's theory between where your roll-off point is and your frequency response and all that. But there's nothing like building it and testing. And actually so my fiance's in Grouse Lodge studio right now. This is why I'm able to see you.
Yes, indeed. Brilliant.
And that's where I was me with Alex Borwick, one of the engineers that works there, and he was kind enough to help do the testing for me. So I'd post him a microphone down, or I'd meet him and give him a microphone, and he'd send me back notes.
Right.
Which is totally invaluable, having an ear that tuned.
Yeah, and somebody else as well.
Detached completely from the product.
Yeah. They have no relationship to how much work went into the thing.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, oh, maybe this is the one. And Alex writes back, I want you to look at this and tell me what you think. And I'm like, maybe that wasn't the one.
Right. So how long did that process take?
It probably...
Or is it finished?
Well, I don't know if it ever finishes, basically.
Yeah.
Because I am working on the next revision of these, but I'm happy with these as they are. But
you're happy now?
Happy now, but there's always things that can be improved. But the process probably... I probably spent about 3 years just building different ribbons of different shapes and sizes, and then I found one that was kind of working. So from that start point is when I started talking to Alex. I'd known him through the studio anyway, and then I asked, can I waste your time, please?
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
And like any great engineer, they're just happy to
play with
toys.
Yeah.
So Alex tried it. I probably had 4 or 5, maybe 6 revisions went through there.
This was all before there was you could buy one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that was probably 6 months of revisions and at least a year or 2 leading up to it on this model. And it's not full on. It's like piecemeal working on it, because at the time I had a strong teaching calendar and a strong gigging calendar, so worked when I could. But now I'm focusing a lot more on the microphone side of life. So
right. And is it a trumpet microphone? Or
no, everything.
Is it a ribbon?
It's just a good ribbon microphone.
Right. So the things that make it a good trumpet microphone make it
exactly
a general one. Okay.
And as you know, the transient response is a great thing on a ribbon. And that's when a good engineer hears it, they see the value of that, because that translates to, well, they're great on overheads or front of kit mic rather, double bass, anything where you need that transient to cut, because the element's so light, it responds like nothing else.
What is the dimension of it, or the thickness of it now?
This standard is 1.8 microns, and I have I call it the Super Infinity version. That's a nod to my trumpet nerdery. There's a trumpet I play, and it's the old super trumpet, because they brought out a better one. And I was like, that's like really painfully simple. I like it. So I do a thinner one with 1.2 micron foil, and that's in my stereo microphone as standard. And then I go a bit thicker for a live version with 2.5 micron.
Tell me about the pop filter arrangement, the basket, the head basket.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, the important thing is that it doesn't get a blast of air, isn't it?
That's important. Probably more so from the user than the designer. It would be very hard to have a good frequency response and mitigate all damage. So you have to accept there is an element of caution with any ribbon.
Right.
Some are quite rugged, but you do sacrifice things.
For the live version, it will be more rugged and probably have
a little bit
a thicker pop shield or whatever.
Yeah, so I have more layers internally, and then I sell a windscreen with it that looks like the dead cat that you put on a blimp or whatever. I love cats. I'm not fond of that term. But you know the one that looks like an old man's hair. So I sell those with the live model, and that just removes all problems.
How does it affect the tone, do you think? Or
with that windscreen, you're reducing your proximity, you're reducing your bass response a little bit, and you're rolling off the high frequency, and you lose about 3 decibels of overall response. But they're hot enough anyway that that's still okay. And there's a live models coming, an active model coming out pretty soon. So I'm thinking the live plus the active board makes perfect sense if I'm reducing the output a little already.
Yes.
And that'll be an option with all of them, but I'm not a fan. If you've great gear like you do, you go passive all the way, because you want your preamps character, the interplay with the transformer and the ribbon. But for people running off Focusrites and whatnot, maybe if they're recording like a soft voice on it, they might just want a bit more gain. So yeah, put a 17 decibel amplifier in it, and all of a sudden the problems are gone.
You may remember when we plugged the microphone in, I commented straight away that the level was quite high. And, ribbons sort of have a reputation for being very low output, which they obviously are. But in this particular instance, it's not especially low. Why is that, do you think?
It's a combination of quite strong magnets, reasonably light foil, a reasonably high ratio on the transformer. The issue with the ratio is you can boost the signal, but you start to trade your frequency response, and there's a sweet spot. And I got very lucky working with Oxford Electrical Products to design the transformer in it. So it's kind of in a sweet spot of it's hot. I couldn't possibly go hotter without compromising something. But right now, it is to try and get the most use out of it for, I know I can sell it to someone with a claret or a sapphire or something, and acoustic guitar is still going to be okay. But like I said, if you go super soft, you still might want a fat head. People forget to plug it in at the right end of the cable, and then it sounds terrible.
Really?
Well, I've noticed it, yeah. Well, and I think it in the literature will say, but plug it into the mic and then run the cable to the head amp.
Yeah. But I'd never thought of that.
Try it both ways and tell me if I'm imagining it, but I did it wrong deliberately to see, and I was convinced that the high frequency went.
And will you offer a preamp plug-in amplifier?
At the moment, that's probably going to come through Atomic Analog with Vinny out in Iceland.
Yeah,
he's the man. So Vinny and I have worked up a preamp for the microphone, and I know he's going to release that as an inline. And I'm going to have it inside my microphones. Whether or not I retail them for him, I'm not sure just yet. But
so he's doing the one you'll be putting internally, yeah?
He is, yeah.
All right, okay.
And I'm pretty much over the moon with what we come up with. He sent me 4 boards initially, nothing marked, just here's boards. Try these and come back to me. So I did, and I was like, I like this one. I hated this. This one sounded this way, and then this. And he's like, yeah, that's what I thought. Vinny was trying different gain staging, and then we're trying different input coupling, which would change the frequency response of it. But where it stands, it sounds just like my microphone.
Only louder.
And my problem with some of these inlines is they make the microphone brighter. That's okay, but...
And why is that, do you think?
It's the impedance matching, so...
Oh, right, okay. The impedance, is that a critical thing in ribbons, or that whole sort of approach?
Oh, yeah, it's almost like a tone control. On the impedance side, if you have a ribbon plugged in on an Eve, and you switch between 300 ohms and 1200 ohms, do a little recording test, acoustic guitar or something, and listen to them side by side. You'll be quite amazed, I think, at the difference.
Who makes the bodies and all that sort of thing? Is that somebody local, or is it?
Yeah, I do like half of
yourself?
it. I get some machine work done for me, and then I do the other half in my dad's workshop.
Your dad's workshop?
Oh, yeah.
Features again. So is he a metal worker as well?
Everything.
Oh, right, okay.
Really, a woodworker, really, but literally anything.
That's sort of been a base for you to move from, in terms of like being able to knock up a body. I mean, I wouldn't have a clue how to knock up a body, but the insides I might be able to.
Oh, it's been great from I was no age. I started building guitars quite young, and I was able just to go out to the workshop and do it. Tools were ostensibly there. I made do with some simple things, but so it's the same with this. Although I did buy a lathe and.
Really, but you were destined to build microphones then?
I think so. I mean, I just have to do things with my hands, I think. I learned the lathe work, learning to cut mouthpieces for trumpets, because that's actually what I thought I was going to do.
Oh, okay, right, okay.
Yeah, so I bought that and spent every waking hour learning how to cut things properly and turn things on it. And then, it's not an industry you can compete with. It's mass production now. I know microphones are too, but there's less of a niche available on a mouthpiece, where Yamaha make God knows how many, 10,000 a month maybe, who knows. But that's where I learned the lathe skill from. I mean, I did buy some proper lathe courses and DVDs and whatnot, so it was a little while ago when those still existed. yeah, I studied everything I could on that, but it's all online.
Tell me about matching pairs. Is that a thing these days? Mass-produced mics and mics that are accurately made. Is it a necessity to match it?
It is basically a good example of two sides of the coin would be Line Audio. I'm sure you know. They make small diaphragm microphones. I forget where they're based. Anyway, they make these microphones that they claim are so close in tolerance that they're matched. And you can buy any number of them and they're matched. And I have 5 or 6 of them at home. And I do find them to be very close. So I think there's certain types of capsule and electronics that are so tolerant, they're so tight on their tolerances that they aren't matched by design. When it comes to ribbon mics and large diaphragm condensers, I think they need to be matched together, probably in most cases. And I do something where I offer to build someone who owns a microphone, a matched microphone, without them having to send the microphone back if they live too far away, essentially. And it's kind of a shot in the dark where I have all of the measurements I made on file and frequency sweeps and so on, and I'll build something that's really close in tolerance to that. So I know it's going to be pretty much on the money, and it's always compared off an exemplary file. So I feel like I can offer that, but I have to go through that process. I can't just build one and send it out without comparing. And I find that it's probably the same on the condenser world where they have to match their electrical output and everything. Because there's a tolerance in how tight the membrane is, and even probably the moisture content in the room when it was made, and when it was measured, what temperature everything was.
Yeah, what time of the year it was.
What time of the year. And so there's probably a lot to be said for buying matched pairs when the company sells it as a matched pair. There'd be a reason.
Right.
Probably, with Line Audio, the ones that I've experienced are very, very tight.
Right.
Very tight. So,
do you have a master microphone that you compare it to?
I do, yeah.
Right, okay. That ensures that every sound is kind of related to it.
Basically, I have its measurements and all the recordings made on it, and it's my microphone I use at home. I keep it out because I want to see how it responds over time as well. So I want to have one that I made early on. So as early as when I met up with you, that'll be still the microphone in my house because I really like the tone of it. So I don't know when that was, before COVID, 5 years maybe.
Is it that long?
Maybe 4 or 5 years. I think it's 5 years, which is horrendous to think about.
Indeed, yeah.
But yeah, that microphone's still sitting up and gets weekly, if not more often use than that. And it's as good as it was when I first built it. But that's something that I need to know as someone that builds them, like what's the impact of them sitting in a room for years. Yeah. So I don't tend to measure against it. I go for an aesthetic against it.
Right.
Just listen, but I have the actual frequency sweeps and measurement files that I'll go against that I first made when I made it. Because that's the data there. My measurement process is the same. So I did a funny one. Well, not funny because it took me ages. I did a matched quartet of microphones last week for an engineer in the Netherlands. And he just said, I'd like to be able to interchange these if possible. And if they get mixed up, I don't want to worry that one set was mixed with the other. Can you match all 4? That took time.
And what is the process?
Every piece of ribbon, when you cut it, it's so fine that, there's quite a number of things. You want the same width and the same tuning. When you're getting thin foil, you need to check that there hasn't been micropores introduced into your foil. So you got to check your foil. If there's porosity, the response is not good. Same for when you corrugate it. If you arc harden it by doing it too tight, completely changes the frequency response. So that has to be the same pitch. It's kind of finicky, and the thinner the ribbon, the more likely you're going to have a problem along the way. So it's actually why I've got this nasty cut in my finger. Was I use surgical scalpels for cutting it, and I was working a little too quickly when I was building these yesterday.
Oh, right, okay.
And incorporated part of my fingertip into one of them.
Oh, wow. Particularly. That'll be a valuable sale then.
A lot of tone in that.
Yes, indeed.
But that's because when you're cutting along the edge, I personally think you need a perfectly clean cut edge, to the point where I might look into doing it with lasers. Maybe that's overkill, but
no, it's not.
It would cut them really quickly as well.
True, yeah.
Plus,
yeah.
I mean,
so the ribbon is made from aluminium.
Aluminium, yeah, exactly.
And built for microphone. Is that what it's for? Is that what the aluminium's for?
I buy it from a supplier that it's sold for microphones, but it's used in gilding. I don't know what other things it's used in, some scientific processes, because other retailers sell for scientific purposes. So I don't know what that might be, but there's certainly use for it, enough for it to exist outside of just microphones.
And is that the fact that it is used outside of microphones? Could it possibly, like you mentioned, porous? Is that one of the reasons it's porous? Because
maybe the quality is less critical. Or
yeah,
something
exactly.
Like that.
Yeah,
it could be. Where I've been buying from recently, I've had very good luck with my samples. Been very, very good. But it's easy enough to check with a strong light.
Oh yeah,
it's strange. You can see when it's so thin, you can see through it.
Right.
Or you shouldn't fully be able to, but...
And I don't know now, but can you use gold or something like that, or silver?
There are other materials you can use, but your trade-off is the strength of the ribbon versus the weight of the ribbon. So aluminium's in a almost sweet spot of its tensile strength versus its electrical conductivity.
Could you use beryllium?
I think someone did, and I think that wouldn't be a silly idea, but I'd say scarcity of material is the issue.
Yeah.
And it probably work hardens more when you corrugate.
Oh, right, yeah.
I think I may have heard of people using titanium before, but again, it's probably a...
How do you store them? Well, what's the recommended way? Like, do you need to keep it vertical?
It's probably better to, but I don't think it's essential to. I haven't seen too much issue with the ribbon over a few years, but it's better to store them vertical for sure.
And there's no real way to clean. Is that true?
Yeah, it would be better just serviced and potentially rebuilt.
Yeah.
It's not probably going to be an issue. Even in working studios, you don't tend to see dirty ribbon microphones. I think people know they're...
Yeah, they're not going to be singing into them.
Yeah,
and the days of smoking in the studios perhaps gone. Yes, yeah.
And other things.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
So I don't think they're, from a hygiene perspective, or like you might worry about a capsule getting dusty or whatnot. I don't think that's particularly an issue. And there's screening in most ribbons anyway to keep the dust out.
Yeah.
We did talk about impedance, and I mean, it's esoteric, but an audio podcast sort of is. But I think impedance is quite an interesting topic for ribbon microphones, because there's quite a difference in your sonic characteristic.
Would that perhaps be more of an issue with ribbon mics rather than, a 57 or
Oh, certainly.
Right, okay.
Be the most pronounced on a ribbon.
Ah, right, okay.
A good way to test, the ISA 1 preamp, the Focusrite little suitcase thing. Brilliant preamps. They have a switchable impedance from, it might be a 150 or 300 ohms up to maybe 6K, maybe 6.5K. Listening to that and sweeping or maybe doing examples in different settings, I'll tell you what you need to know. But the short term of it is, the higher the impedance, the more responsive the microphone becomes.
Yeah.
And gets a little brighter. Interesting.
Well, is it the other way around? As in, on the other impedance, it's actually duller. It's naturally brighter because it's pulling more from the microphone, essentially, isn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of. I heard it equated once as like trying to tow a cart with a spring, and your impedance is how stiff's the spring.
Oh, right.
So if you're very low impedance, trying to tow it, it's a really loose spring. And that transient response and that responsiveness is slow.
Okay.
It's not a perfect analogy, but
I might use that in the future.
I wrote a short post about it that I think is closer to being accurate, but again, we're working on my brain right now.
And where was the post?
I think I put it on Facebook somewhere. I'd responded to someone on a recording thing and dug it out. I'll look for it. I'll probably find that. But that idea of like the flexible coupling, I did, it's not my idea. Someone said that and I liked it.
Right, yeah.
Because it made intuitive sense.
Yes.
It's intangible until you can...
Yeah, exactly.
You can resolve it, but...
I guess recording a band is the situation to be making those decisions. Because if you were just listening to it, as in, if you were blowing your trumpet now, and I switched the impedance, and it went from slightly one, and well, I don't know which was better.
Exactly.
Because you have no context.
It's not in the mix and so on. I think in that respect, when I do that, because I do remote recording sessions at home quite often, and I do have the option to change these things, I just look at the project and do I want a punchier, poppier horn sound, or do I want a warmer, more traditional tone?
That would be in relation to a mix.
In relation to a mix, and you've got that information.
Yes, indeed.
Exactly. So if you weren't...
But I guess it's just a nicer way to shape things again from the beginning as well.
Exactly, and that it goes back to the start of get it right going in kind of thing. Mic in a good position, and something appropriate for the job you're doing. I did have an interesting experience with the Atomic Analog Special Op 6. So Vinny,
is that his wooden box front thing? Yes, indeed.
That is it's a work of art, and it's a remake or Vinny's version of the RCA Special Op 6 from the 30s, which was a valve preamp, 4-ribbon microphones with 84 decibels of tube gain, which is astonishing. And I know that Vinny worked unbelievably meticulously on it to get it to work, and at those higher gain settings, it's electrically quite a thing to tame. It wants to go into oscillation.
Yeah.
And he has it perfect. So that preamplifier, I persuaded him to build me a mono one. So I have the first mono one because I don't need a pair.
Right, okay.
I was just doing trumpet sessions.
Do you ever? You never record stereo trumpet then? No,
I do, but I go through a 1073 as my second channel.
Oh, right, okay.
And if I'm doing a space pair for trumpet, I'll go into something clean because it's more likely to be a classical thing.
Oh, right, okay.
So go straight into an RME or something, and for that kind of clinical thing. But yeah, most of the stuff I do is like indie, singer-songwriter, pop sort of thing. And that's all. I have 2 mic positions, off-axis, non-axis, 2 different preamps, and then it's a bit of color that you can change or blend them both. But the interesting thing in his Op 6 that he built me, we were talking about how I wanted it specified because he can tweak his designs. And I said I'd love an impedance switch on it, naturally around 600 ohms. And I said I'd love something higher than that because I like that option. And sorry, Vinny, but I only use it on the original.
All right, okay.
It sounds beautiful on both, but... it doesn't sound as dramatically different.
Is that just switching a coil in a transformer, or how?
I don't know how I did it.
Right, okay.
I have no idea, but with the tube preamp, the impedance is very dynamic. So based on what gain setting you've got, the impedance will go up. So if you're running 60 decibels versus 30 decibels, there'll be higher impedance at the higher gain setting.
Right.
So I think where I'm setting it, it's sort of in the middle of sound-wise anyway, the settings, but you can definitely hear the 2K setting is punchier and brighter, but yeah, the original, it seems like, RCA and now Vinny got it in the first go. They didn't need my input.
The RCA spec of the spec that they gave and suggested usage and all those things, which was the original preamps were kind of made that way, weren't they? Yeah. They were like, our desks were originally made like, there's a sheet of information, we'll use that and get on with it.
That's a very good question. That is a very, very intricate design. Maybe it started that way, but I think it was the ribbons that day had very, very low output.
Right.
Ceramic magnets and so on. And
so the magnets are really the engine.
Yeah, exactly. So you if you can get a stronger field in, you can get more signal out.
Right. And just while we're on the subject of magnets, what are they made from?
Mine are neodymium magnets. In RCA's day, that would have been ceramic, like a traditional ceramic magnet. So the horseshoe-looking thing that you saw in classrooms, that sort of thing. It may even have been, I'm not sure about this, but magnetized metal of some sort. Yeah, I need to look into that a little more, but I know certainly ceramic magnets would have been common.
Is that why the early ribbons were huge yokes as well? Okay.
The big armatures and a lot of weight from a lot of magnet.
Yeah.
It's something that I'm building at the moment. I don't do replica things. I'm more interested in pursuing a concept, and my concept is try and build it the old way for this next one. So, but I have a couple of massive horseshoe magnets and a big armature. I don't know what the metalwork's going to look like, but yeah, it's definitely leaning in that 77 direction. So it'll be a heavy yoke.
Right. And is that a commercial unit or will it be a commercial unit?
It will be, yeah.
All right, okay.
Maybe in a year.
Okay.
It's at the start of its R&D at the moment.
Right.
But I'm about to commit and send my CAD files to CNC company and get my armature made, and it's the most fun part for me. I love making them. I love using them more than anything. But when I get the design ground up, it's like just playing. So it's not necessarily work. It works when you screw something up and then have to figure it all out.
Right. Yeah.
Why can't I make this sound the way I want? And then the work comes in. But the initial part, that's just playtime. It's just having fun.
So you've mentioned Vinny's Atomic Analog, is that?
That's right. Yeah.
An expensive preamp?
It's on par with anything of its type. I don't actually know what his price is right now, but the stereo unit, it might be €2,800.
All right,
or it might be that in American dollars, which means it's a good bit lower in terms of euros.
That's not,
it's not atrocious.
No.
It's on par for the amount of preamp you get. It's perfectly priced, or damn near cheap, because
compared to Fairchild rebuilds of the which
exactly
are
mega money.
Yeah.
And the quality of components, and he's got a tremendous investment in just the componentry. And you get a hand-drawn schematic with it, which is beautiful. A spare tube, hand-drawn schematic, and the thing's just a work of art.
Yeah,
sounds just perfect.
What do you feel about condensers? They're used for recording acoustics. They're used for overheads and all. What's the balance?
I just love microphones. Actually, is my approach to everything. Is for an inexplicable reason, I've always liked them as an object. I think it's the idea of being able to capture sound. So the device is that I love, and everything beyond that is just let's try and sound the way we want it to and sound nice. Personally, I like characterful sounds, so I'd rather a microphone be quite dark or quite bright or rich or whatever, but I'm not massively into the super clean aesthetic. A lot of classical recording is
based on that approach.
Entirely based on that. It's not, that's just from a personal kind of appreciation of music for me. I've nothing against that from a design perspective. So I will have a goal of making something like that, but because my favorite records are like the bebop records that kind of sounded maybe a bit rough from an engineering perspective, but
one microphone
in a room, bunch of people playing great. And I love that. Rudy Van Gelder's my hero when it comes.
The legend
who pioneered modern recording, pioneered the idea of even putting microphones on instruments.
Really?
I think so. Certainly at the start.
What era was he?
He would have been doing, I'm sure, 50s, 60s probably.
Oh, right, okay. So just kind of after the initial, the Abbey Road was 31 or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
And the Neumann thing and all that. Right.
His studio, in Hackensack, New Jersey, was part optician. One of his parents was an optician, maybe, and has the photos of it. And they talk about, we're going into his kind of like a living room is the live room. You see the pictures, and it's ginormous. It's a beautiful wooden live room. Yeah, I think maybe it's more in the the jazz side of things, where a lot of the recordings, it was a mic in a room. He started to think, how do we get that person's sound on the recording the way they sound to me in the room? So yeah, there's great pictures of him and Miles and Coltrane and whatnot, positioning microphones and listening and, pioneering even, a monitoring setup that was adequate to even know what he was doing was making sense. So very interesting character. And yeah, that's one of my inspirations for things. Is I love it to sound how you think it sounds, or you know what I mean, like
yeah.
emotionally in that regard. But yeah, the condensers, and built a few tube condensers, and I'm working on one at the moment that I'm hoping to bring out maybe in a year. I have 4 or 5 on the go at the moment.
Really?
Yeah, I have
are all conceptually different? And...
Totally, yeah.
Right.
So I have 2 new ribbons on the board. One of them I do have a finished motor for. I need to start testing. And then obviously the big magnet. I'm working on an Omni condenser mic, which is probably the next one that's going to come out. Relatively flat condenser. An Omni on again, inspired by the horns. An Omni in a room with a set of horns. It sounds good. The room's good. But I love large ensemble recording, and you put 5 Omnis up in a Decca configuration and you've got a beautiful sound.
Right. That was kind of my next question. How do you go about your trumpet mightn't shine in this room?
Yeah, I could definitely make it work in here.
Right.
I can hear early reflections off this wall, and but you've got gobos, so
but that's
we can make it work. And the side null of the ribbon's great. I've recorded in reasonably live rooms, but got away with it on a ribbon. And that used to be a thing for me where that was off-putting, the figure 8 thing in a bad room. I used to record in my bedroom, and it was like, it sounds like my bedroom. And instead of treating the room, I got a different microphone. It's like, so you learn you learn hard lessons in this game.
YouTube.
But when people are talking to me, what should I do? This preamp or this preamp? And my first question is, have you treated your room yet?
Yeah.
And and buy good stands and good leads. The preamp's the shiny thing that everyone is like, we'll get this or this plug in.
Yeah, transformers, blah, blah, blah.
Exactly. And meanwhile, the room isn't being looked at all. It's boring, but it's the most important thing, especially for mixing and recording.
Yeah.
But in here, if I do a track trumpet, we'll get a good sound. It'll take a minute. I tend to just go around and play and listen. There'll be
particular spots.
Yeah, there'll be spots in the room that speak better and have a better balance. And
what about the key? In terms of if you've found a spot in the room at one particular key, would you find that it doesn't quite work in another key and stuff?
That's actually a really good question. On the trumpet, less so, because our pitch is high. So our fundamental wouldn't go below 120, 140 maybe.
Yeah, and there'll be a lot of harmonics
and
as well.
Everything in the trumpet is, say 2nd through 12th harmonic, and strongly at the maybe 7th harmonic or so is where a lot of our tone is. So yeah, that's in the the 1 kilohertz to 3 kilohertz region for us, maybe a little lower. And so that's not a big issue. But if you're recording tenor saxophone, my fiance is a tremendous saxophone player, and she's very fussy about where she's playing in the room, how she's playing on the mic. And if you're playing down low, you can just everything's very, very sweet, and you get to the bottom register, and all of a sudden you get a boom, or you get a honk,
which is a room mode.
A room mode, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's...
So does that suggest, well, I probably know the answer to this, a bigger room?
Bigger rooms are a great solution to our problems. Big rooms or dead rooms, and that's the compromise.
Or big dead rooms.
Another thing.
Yeah.
They cost a lot, though.
They do.
But that's the compromise we make. I think everyone's making that now. We're recording a spare room in the house or something. Let's just try and kill it as much as possible.
Yeah.
And it's very hard from a performing perspective, where you rely on the acoustic feedback
to how you blow.
Exactly. And and singing as well. So even monitoring in your headphones, it's really hard to get it where it feels that you're not overdoing something. So I know when Melena's recording vocals, she sings beautifully as well and does a lot of recording on that. She'll spend an hour or two getting the monitoring chain sounding in a way where I can sing without hurting my voice, or because I'm going to sing for a few hours now, and I want it to sound sweet the whole time.
Yeah,
and then moving in the room, find where that is, and that it's the same thing for trumpet, except maybe I don't have the patience to do it for a few hours, or I should. I think if you do it once, you probably that's a one case. She has now a chain that you can just recall. And now you have a monitoring chain that sounds good, and I should do the same thing for me. But typically, I can make it work.
Yeah, indeed, yeah.
But absolutely, you can tire yourself out, and probably the same as a drummer playing in a dead room who plays way too loud. Then,
right,
and they only know because their ears are ringing at the end.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I sort of feel that. Well, I sort of know when it comes down to it. That the room you're in is spectacularally important.
Oh, it's everything, yeah.
As equally as important as the microphone, the preamp, the gear in general.
Yeah.
It's as important. And I also feel that that's not a particularly well-known idea.
Yep. It's not well known enough that people buy egg crate foam, and that's their problem solved. And if you've listened to Ian Shepherd's podcast, which you put me onto, you realize that doesn't work.
Yes.
10 kilohertz and up or something. That's solid treats. And
you've
got all these bass modes and problems in your room still.
Absolutely. Yeah. When I'm talking about acoustics, it's everything up to 200 hertz and then to 200 hertz onwards.
Yep.
And that's the two things which are entirely different.
Yeah.
And need to be treated different.
Yep.
Need to be thought about differently. Anyway.
No, but that's fascinating to me. I've read, I don't know like you do, but I've read a couple of books on that stuff, and I, for our computer room, have the membrane style bass traps, slightly shallower ones. It was a nice pay. I think they're 90 hertz or something, but when I brought those in, again, room sounds the same, but all of a sudden things start to tidy up massively. And that's beautiful because they're not huge.
They're ideal for small spaces.
Yeah. I don't know. I think you can probably make them yourself. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, I got a local guy to just make up.
Yeah.
And I have a couple of bigger ones. They were originally built for another room, but like in here, it all quietens things down a little bit.
It calms things.
Yeah.
I've made enough of the broadband panels where, that's a simple construction that anybody should do.
Yes.
Like, it doesn't
matter.
And that's
your 200 hertz up.
Exactly. And that, again, matters massively for an instrument that lives there, like the trumpet. So, that's the first port of call, really. But, trading room for monitoring and bass, absolutely. But, there's people who say I can't make them. Everybody, I think, could.
Yeah, it's true.
They're quite simple. They don't need to look perfect.
Look at that. That one's, it's just...
And on hinges the way it should be.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, just because it'll stand up and down.
Completely practical.
Yeah.
Simple things. And, if you know someone that knows someone who can make them for you as well. So the cost doesn't need to be exorbitant. Yeah, that's something I end up talking to people about every week or two. Just, do you think this preamp or this preamp's the best? What's your room?
So that's how Micheal Barkley does it. Many thanks to him for taking time out of his busy day to have a chat. Do visit geniusmove.ie to find out about recording courses to suit you. Thanks for listening.